Ivanna, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I know that you moved to the US from Ukraine at 15, is that correct?
Yeah.
But you've been doing a lot of activism for your home country in the last couple months and years. Can you walk me through a little bit about what you've been doing?
Yeah, a little bit over a year ago, I became an ambassador of United 24. It's the official fundraising platform of Ukraine. And ever since I started working with them in the education and science direction, I've been able to witness the devastating impact of the Russian invasion on the education system in Ukraine. Over 3,500 educational facilities have been damaged severely or destroyed, forcing over 900,000 children to study remotely while suffering psychological trauma. And despite this overwhelming challenge that they've been dealing with, I've been so deeply inspired by the resilience shown by Ukrainian educators and students. Even the most devastating situation that they've been living in, they continue to pursue their study, sometimes being in the bomb shelter or under shelling. And I think their stories is a testament of unwavering Ukrainian spirit.
That makes a lot of sense. So when were you last there, and what was the state of the country at that time?
I was last there in May of 2023, and I was able to meet the people working on the ground, mostly people that work for United 24, and they're very inspiring, motivated individuals. A lot of them are even younger than I am, and we've been able to visit some cities that have been nearly leveled by the Russian forces. So we've been able to visit Lyceum in the village of Buzova that we're currently rebuilding. And I've been planning as well, going to Ukraine just before this summit with the International Rescue Committee, who I just started working with. And we, due to the just security reasons, we had to reschedule by a few weeks. But every time I visit, I feel so much closer to my people, just witnessing their undying strength is something that I think is the driving force behind everything that I do.
What do you think should be done globally to help Ukraine that's not currently being done?
I think the global community can help in so many ways, from humanitarian aid to advocating for stronger international responses. And beyond that, it's also about keeping the conversation alive, ensuring that the world doesn't look away, because a lot of the world has become desensitized towards the news that are being shown. But I think it's important to remember that behind those headlines are real people, children, women, families that have been living through really difficult times and whose lives have been turned upside down.
I think that's a really good point that you brought up, because I feel like a lot of times there's this trauma fatigue and desensitization to what's going on, especially when there's things going on in other parts of the world as well. How would you advise people to keep Ukraine top of mind and keep pushing on this issue?
I think continuing being educated. I think there's a lot of resources online that are quite helpful. Just like, if you are wanting to help with humanitarian aid, once again, International Rescue Committee has been imperative in helping Ukrainian refugees. I just recently met with some families in Los Angeles who have shared their heartbreaking stories, and I think the ability to connect on a just human level with people who have struggled with this war is something that can really inspire those who thankfully have not had the chance to know what it is to live through war. It can inspire them to want to help, because I think that Ukrainian people are are fighting for democratic values around the world, and remembering, keeping that top of mind is quite important, because it's not just Ukraine's fight.
Now, you were still living in Ukraine during the Orange Revolution in 2004 and 2005, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you describe for me that experience for you and how that's shaped, your career and who you are as a person today?
Well, I remember the most vivid memory is it being really cold because it was wintertime, and I was really young, and I remember just standing for, I believe it was around 2 weeks of continuous protest, and my brother and I were really young. Everybody was there. Communities, families were gathering together and feeding each other and standing up for something that they really believed in. But I think it's part of the Ukrainian nature, because I grew up in a family that is celebrating the Ukrainian history and culture so vividly. I'm really, really lucky to have been raised by a very strong woman who both my mom and my dad have been also part of the revolution in Granite in 1990. So we have, during that time, they were my age. So we basically have generation after generation growing up through revolutions, and I really think that is our identity. I think the Orange Revolution, and then the Revolution of Dignity in 2013, it started through 2014. I was also in Ukraine during that time. It was the first time I came to visit my family since I moved to the States. I think they just continue to show the resilience of the Ukrainian people and our desire for freedom, our desire for the world to recognize us as a nation with a very rich, deep history and culture. And those things, they define who I am as a person.
What would you say is your biggest hope for your country today?
Freedom and safety for our children. I recognize just how much trauma our people are living through, and I really hope that we find a way to heal in a way that is helpful for the future generations. But of course, the biggest wish has been and will be freedom and peace for my people.
Now, you, as an actress, I feel like I hear from a lot of creatives that they walk this fine line between advocating for what they believe in and their creative pursuits and arts and just trying to, keep up this public image. How do you balance, the causes you believe in while also being in the creative field?
I have no choice. I was born into the world that doesn't really allow for me to live a different life. But I do believe that as artists or viewers, it is our responsibility to demand and support stories and films that recognize and champion stories that reflect the diversity of the world that we live in, that champion stories that have been left untold, voices that have been silenced, and perspectives that have been overlooked. And I think in doing so, we're not only enriching our own lives, but contribute to a more empathetic, understanding, and inclusive society.
Going along with that, what stories would you like to see told that aren't being told in Hollywood today?
I mean, for me personally, it's always been stories of where I come from. As an actor that comes from a country in Eastern Europe, from Ukraine, I've definitely been met with the difficulty, especially in the very beginning of my career in America, because I've been in the States for 10 years. I've had to face the difficulty of going for roles that, they're described as a sex worker or a mafia or people that've been hired to kill. So I really hope And I think I do see, actually, especially with this year and the films that have come out, I've been able to witness that diversity being shown much more. And I just hope that people continue to champion those voices. My hope remains for the world to be more interested in Ukraine and the Ukrainian people and our history, because we have a lot to tell.
Has then your background and your experiences influenced the types of roles or projects that you decide to take on today?
Absolutely. I also believe that we tell stories that are meant for us. And I think as long as you move through your life truthfully to your nature, those stories find you. But of course, my life and where I come from greatly shaped my choices in the films that I participate in.
Besides, being cast as a sex worker or a mafia person, what are the other biggest misconceptions about people from Eastern Europe or Ukraine that you think you've been fighting to overcome, especially in the entertainment industry?
Well, you have just mentioned.
Just those two.
I mean, I think the over-sexualization of a woman is something big. I think in Ukraine but it's true. I mean, we've had, prior to the full-scale invasion, I think one of the bigger problems that Ukrainian women have been dealing with is sex tourism. But regarding misconceptions, I think my life has been, to be honest, so enriched by my own culture that I've been really far away from the misconception, and thankfully I'm surrounded by people who strive to understand more about the world around them and the people that they meet that come from different countries. But I think it's about understanding that Ukraine is a country with very rich history that goes back hundreds of years. Ukraine used to be part of the Soviet Union, but before the Soviet Union, there was also Ukraine, with people who also were fighting for independence, for freedom, and so I would wish for people to be able to be aware of that more and recognize it more.
So what's next for you personally, philanthropically, anything coming up in 2024 that you're really looking forward to? Within my work in advocacy, I will continue to do everything I can to help my country reach peace and independence. And creatively, I'm about to go off to New Zealand to film a movie that I'm quite excited about. And I just take it step by step. I really think life has shown that you can't really plan ahead that much. So just really try to take it day by day. That makes sense. And last question for you. What, if anything, right now is giving you hope?
My people and those who open their heart to my motherland. Those, I think, to be honest, being at the summit is a very hopeful endeavor. And I'm incredibly inspired by the women that I've met. It gives me hope for a world that hopefully provides a nurturing environment for the generations to come. I really hope that that is the case for us. Absolutely, and I wish you the very best of luck on all of your endeavors this year, and thank you so much for chatting with me. Thank you so much for having me.